7th. We got news for you today. A couple of big stories that happened over the past few days. First of all, to talk about media, we had Bankless, who provided let me go back. Bankless DAO put in a request to the Arbitrum Foundation for 1.82 million ARB to fund the production of Arbitrum-themed content in a variety of different languages that would be done by Bankless DAO. This turned out to be pretty explosive, if you want to call it that. There was a lot of negative feedback that came from crypto Twitter, and we learned later on that it just turned into a whole mess. And I think it was unfortunate, right? I think we're in media, and it's important for us to remember that it's not always tangible, like how things work, and it's hard, and media and marketing is really kind of cutthroat and competitive in this space, and it takes a lot to go out and get on every day, or write and do all these things that we do. I think the issue at hand with the Bankless thing is that there was a lack of definitive KPIs, number one. Number two was that there was not a clear separation of Bankless DAO from Bankless HQ. So Bankless HQ is the primary company. Bankless DAO is this DAO that they set up later on, where they gave bank tokens out to their subscribers. And they make content. It's not connected with the actual Bankless HQ guys, who have a totally separate business. However, up until today, the Bankless HQ guys were the largest token holders in the Bankless DAO. They'd also licensed out their brand to Bankless DAO, and so it reflects on them regardless of, just because of that kind of close branding association.
So I think I'd dispute that, to be honest, because I don't follow Bankless all that closely. I'm fans of them. I just I got a chance to appear on Bankless once, which I thought was an amazing experience. But beyond that, I don't actively follow them, but I was still very aware of the distinction between Bankless DAO and Bankless the company, because it seemed to me that RSA and David had been very transparent every time it was mentioned in explaining the distinctions. So I'm not sure who was confused, because if I barely follow it, who was confused?
I think if you it's pretty much the same branding across both the DAO and the HQ, right? They have the same logo except for DAO at the end, and they're using the same color scheme and stuff. So I think some people could get confused if they didn't know. It takes time to actually know how these organizations are set up. And, when you see Bankless DAO and Bankless HQ posting on Twitter, you might not really understand the difference. But
also, they choose such specific words who are it sounds the same, it looks pretty much the same. I think they kind of wanted it to feel they could have separated the brands in a much better way. You know what I mean?
I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the Bankless guys are really hardworking. I worked with him for a little bit, and he's
extremely
very hardworking. They put in the work. They've gotten to the size they are today through just tireless dedication and really delivering a great product. And I think the repudiation and lashing back of CT probably has to do with if it probably has to do with the multitude of ARB grants that we've seen. If we had just seen this in a bubble, it probably wouldn't have been too much. But we've seen a ton of other grants come through. We've had the Arbitrum STIP, now this back funding. I believe there's a couple of other grants as well too that had gone through, and people may have gotten a little bit oversaturated with these requests. And it's not like the Bankless DAO wasn't going to produce. They had documented it pretty well. I think it's just that the ask may have been a little bit too large. It probably could have started with $200, $300, $500,000 with the brand that they have, and that probably would have gone unnoticed.
I don't know. To me, it looked like the trolls were just kind of arguing in bad faith and complaining. I think just salty because bear market, number down. That's all it looked like to me.
Yeah. Look, I don't have anything against it. I mean, if they think they can go out and deliver a good product and make an impact, then sure. If if they can tie good KPIs and stuff to it, but pretty unfortunate for them. Today, we actually had the Bankless guys come out and say that they had burned all their tokens in bank and that they were going to restructure the kind of relationship that they had with Bankless DAO. Maybe that's a rebranding. Maybe that's a like removal of the license for Bankless HQ, because by like licensing your brand out in perpetuity, you essentially take on all the flack of whatever that licensee has, right? Like if they do something that is not liked by the community, it's definitely going to come back to you. It's tough. I mean, that's the thing about being like, yeah. I mean, that's the thing about being like popular in crypto, right? Is that like some people are going to hate you no matter what, and other people are going to love you a lot. And that's kind of where you want to get to, right? Like milquetoast being in the middle is not where you want to be.
Yeah, if everyone likes you, you're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah,
that's the first point. But I do think that there's in my opinion, at least the way I see it, there's a very big gap between Bankless and the kind of crypto Twitter that we are used to reading, like our circles of crypto Twitter, because I think that most people who are now very much against Bankless, I don't know if they are still watching it as like in like a year before, a year ago or stuff like that. And I do think that, like you said, the main thing that Bankless here were wrong about, in my opinion, was like two things. First of all, since the start, it wasn't that clear, in my opinion, what are the lines between Bankless and Bankless DAO, like who does what, and the brands are kind of got like mixed up together, the way I see it. And also they seemed extremely greedy with their ask, and that's what I think really made.
I don't think it's greedy. Like
no, I'm not saying they were greedy or not. I'm just saying that it was perceived, in my opinion, as very greedy to ask 1.8 million ARB or dollars. I'm not even sure, and I think that's what got them. That's what got the community to give them such kind of backlash. Like people were, like you said, if they would have asked like for 250K, people wouldn't have cared that much. And I think that on that one,
maybe I look again, like if we're looking at it in terms of like $2 million for like a full-time content media team in the United States gets about 15 full-time workers plus other expenses. So it's not, if like Arbitrum was setting up a marketing department inside the United States and building a marketing team here, they probably pay more, right? Especially if they're going to have more than 15 people. Those people might have bigger salary expectations. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. So I don't think the $2 million is like a huge ask. I think people just looked at the KPIs and said that, oh, hey, like look at Bankless DAO, like their recent views are like they're getting 5 views on videos. I don't know, but it seems that there'll be some more stuff that comes out of it. David and RSA they burn their tokens and they're gonna have a DAO proposal that comes next week.
By the way, I do think that if this will create in the next few months a kind of if it will make a part of the community that's abandoned Bankless in a way to return to it, because they go like whatever's going to happen on this one is going to actually strengthen the trust between the community and Bankless. That's what actually I kind of hope for them, because just like you said earlier, I do think that they're bringing like a very good and important service to the industry, even though I don't always agree with how they do it or how they present it. I'm not saying they're perfect, but we're not perfect as well.
Right. So moving on, we had a other story that has been just blowing up, which is Blast. They've gotten in about $500 million worth of ETH over the past week, which is kind of crazy. People are sending massive.
Did you say $500 million?
Yeah, $500 million worth of ETH into the Blast contract. That's crazy.
That gives a new context on the balance on the Bankless item.
And
500.
uh,
Maybe they should have approached Blast instead of Arbitrum.
oh man, well, people have really been the takes out there that I've been hearing on crypto Twitter have just been all over the place. A lot of like legal people have been saying like, what the heck is going on? Like if we had clients that did like 1/10 of this, we'd be shutting their project down by now. And here's Blast breaking essentially a ton of rules. And we saw some of the reaction to this with a tweet that was put out by Dan Robinson, who is, I believe, legal at, he's research at Paradigm, also a lawyer as well too. And he said that about the Blast announcement that they think that it crossed lines in both messaging and execution. He goes on to say that they don't agree with the decision to launch the bridge before the L2 or not to allow withdrawals for 3 months, since we think it sets a bad precedent for other projects. Because again, like when anything is successful in crypto, 1,000 other projects will copy it. So this model that Blast is using now will definitely be used by somebody else. And so we think that the much of the marketing cheapens the work of a serious team. And goes on to say like, yeah, we invested into Pac-Man with Blur and a couple of other things. And he's really doing some great stuff, and that they are going to have a talk with the team. So the question at hand really is that like they've taken in money from pretty much everywhere into a 3 to 5 multi-sig, and they've swapped that into different assets. And from like a hot legal take perspective, that is something that the SEC probably should be knocking on their doors and being like, hey, what's up? Like, here's a quasi on-chain hedge fund, which is taking in $500 million and is now managing that. And there's little to no disclosures about who the multi-sigs are or who's on the multi-sig, what sort of security practices that they have. And this is kind of concerning because people have been looking into the on-chain data, and they found out that the Blast founders, or at least like by on-chain data, is connected to the Binance deposit address that has connections to the Inferno drainer. I hadn't heard about Inferno, but apparently it's some sort of like hack or rug or something. So it may or may not be connected. It looks like there's also some connections to like Houdini Swap that has a lot of other deposits into it. So a little weird about the multi-sig though for Blast is that the multi-sig essentially funded like addresses within the like 4 addresses that have no history and that are all connected to the multi-sig. So there's no real understanding of who those multi-signers are. It could just be Pack with like 4 hardware wallets, right? We don't know that. There's no information about this. So this is kind of like, this is the bad shit that people talk about like teams doing just crazy stuff, putting a lot of money at risk. $500 million now, which is not like an insignificant amount, and just not really thinking about the unintended consequences of what happens. Like what happens if they brick the contract, or like North Korea comes in and is able to compromise the multi-sig.
Also, whose money is that? Like who put 500 there? Like
I don't know, but apparently some people with look here it is. If you have Steth, right, or you have ETH, right, all the Blast contract is like it's like a bond almost, where you're lending your assets to the Blast multi-signers for a period of 3 months, maybe a little bit longer, until they launch their mainnet, and in return you get back a yield on top. Maybe from what I've seen on CT, some of the analysts have said that would be closer to like 30 to 40% based on TVL, or not TVL, but based on market cap projections down the line. So, you just swap your ETH over for 3 to 4 months and you get a nice yield for it that you wouldn't get other places. But yeah, definitely kind of crazy. And I'm just wondering, like, people don't care about like any sort of safety issues, right? If we've learned anything from FTX and Terra, people just want to degen into these
and also I
crazy
think there was
projects.
I'm sorry. I think that there was just a whole other level of funds invested in marketing and connection and stuff like that. That just puts this project, I guess, in a completely different level on the TVL side of things. But I think that at least for consumers like myself, it kind of makes me like even. Like I'm not touching it until I'm sure it's something that I'm
I
that
agree.
fits all my narrative.
I agree
you
with
know?
you. Yeah, it's
It's
definitely
too big. Yeah.
yeah. It's huge, and I have safety concerns about that. I think a lot of other people do. But hey, if you don't and you like what Pac has done and you want to do some staking with him, like no one's stopping you. Okay, the last story that I wanted to go over today is that did you know there's going to be like a Cosmos fork?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Saw something about that. No, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I didn't know about this either. Apparently, there's been a lot of internal political drama going on at Cosmos.
Yeah.
And yeah, with a lot of people trying to push for Cosmos to become less conservative than it is, while others kind of wanting to remain conservative. And so Jaquan, the founder of Cosmos, has declared he will lead a fork of Cosmos Hub. It's called Atom 1, and it potentially could be the biggest Atom airdrop ever. And it would resolve these political tensions that are in the Cosmos community right now. So apparently there was this vote called Prop 848 that determined some. Let me see if I can look this up. 848 on Cosmos. Essentially, this determined a big determination about how Cosmos was going to move into the future, and it passed, but it was highly contentious. And so this airdrop apparently is going to go to the people who voted no, which is interesting, right? Like, what if there was a way to go back to the Bitcoin Cash airdrop and only deposit or only give out BCH to those who were for the like introduction or like increasing the block size, right? And then the people that weren't, you just don't airdrop to them. That's essentially what's happening here. So this airdrop could be pretty big. Last cycle we had Juno, and Juno actually went up to a 1-to-1 ratio with Atom at the time. And so people are getting kind of hyped about this Cosmos airdrop.
Yeah, I heard about it back then, but I didn't follow that much more Ethereum oriented myself.
Well, I think this is the issue. Is like Cosmos has kind of been just like bogged down, right? Like people use it, but it's not had the same kind of dynamic growth that they've had on like Solana or some of the other Altel ones.
It's also very separate than the rest of the industry. I don't know, at least like on the circles I'm looking at. Like most of them are not. Cosmos does not exist on most places I'm looking for. But sure, that's just like the way I perceive it. I'm sure that for many others it's not the case.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, if it does help Cosmos kind of gain some relevancy again and not be a curse coin again, then I think it's pretty cool. Oh yeah, did we talk about this Infinity Stones disclosure? This will be the last one. I thought this one was crazy.
What's that?
So Infinity Stones or Imp Stones was found to have a vulnerability that essentially put all of its validators at risk. This was found by a white hat at D Wallet Labs, one of their security researchers. So the vulnerability was linked to an open source library called Talon, and it was found back in July of 2023, and it's been resolved. But apparently, the researcher found that all the Ethereum validators on Infinite Stones, which represents I believe about 2% of the total market of staked ETH would have been at risk here. And so it was pretty large, and it's extremely complex. Like we'll have the docs here, and you can go take a look at the report. But man, it is like the amount of digging that had to be done here was just kind of crazy. This white hat was essentially, getting very deep into the code, and I've got it right here. It's called the $1 billion exploit, collecting validated private keys via Web 2 attacks. And so it's just crazy. So worth the read. Maybe we'll see if we can have the Infinity Stones guys come on to talk about it. But some like,
can you show the link, Sam?
Yeah, here I'll share the link in our chat, and we can share it out.
Cool.
Cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. If you haven't already, please go listen to our interview with Heel Reuter from Florence Finance. You're going to have to excuse me because I'm not Dutch, and I cannot pronounce his name perfectly. It has this like ha. It's like heel.
He with a heel.
Yeah, it's a KH heel, and then
yeah, but the he on for the Dutch and for like what we do in the Middle East, I think it's a different kind of he.
It's not as hard, right?
It's not exactly. No, it's what you're accustomed to. I think that, for example, for people on our side of the world, other thing is kind of like say think instead of think. It takes us probably like a few years to understand that there's something like this think, all kind of stuff that are not part of our own languages.
Well, cool.
But I think it was a great interview either way.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up there. Sure, we'll be back tomorrow. We got a big lineup tomorrow. We got Magistyle coming in from Timeless. We also have Smiley Finance, and then potentially we also have Dopex coming on as well too.
Oh, nice.
So be prepared. Might be a long stream tomorrow.
Good.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you again tomorrow.